The great council chamber of the Zephyrian Dominion stretched across 3 miles of crystalline floor. 12 different species sat in their designated sections, each believing themselves to be the most evolved beings in the galaxy. The ethereals floated in their glowing spheres, their minds touching thoughts across light years. The crystalline masters grew from the floor itself, their bodies made of living diamond. The hegemony warriors stood at attention, their 4 arms crossed in perfect military formation. For 3,000 years, these 12 species had ruled everything. They had conquered worlds, enslaved entire civilizations, and shaped the galaxy according to their vision of order. No species had ever challenged them. No species had ever dared. High Commander Zethix of the Ethereals spoke without moving his mouth. His words appeared directly in the minds of all present. The scouts have returned from the Outer Rim. They bring disturbing news. A hologram flickered to life in the center of the chamber. It showed a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. The planet looked peaceful from space, covered in swirling white clouds and vast blue oceans. But the data streaming alongside the image told a different story. The species calls themselves humans, Zethix continued. They have achieved basic faster-than-light travel within the last 50 years. Their technology is primitive by our standards. They still use chemical combustion for many of their vehicles. Their longest-lived governments have existed for less than 300 years. General Korath of the Hegemony Guard slammed one of his 4 fists on his stone chair. Then why do we waste time discussing them? Send a single destroyer. End them quickly. Because, said Dr. Veshai, the chief scientist of the crystalline masters, they are not what they appear to be. Her diamond body began to glow brighter as she accessed the data files. Our scouts intercepted their communications, their entertainment broadcasts, their military training programs, their historical records. The hologram changed, showing images of human cities. Massive structures of metal and glass reached toward the sky. Millions of humans moved through streets like rivers of flesh. But then the images shifted to show something else. Humans in armor carrying weapons fighting in the ruins of burning buildings. Humans in spacecraft, ramming their ships into larger vessels as they exploded. Humans standing over the bodies of creatures that looked like they came from nightmares. They come from a death world, Veshai explained. Their planet has tried to kill them for millions of years. Ice ages that last for thousands of years. Volcanoes that block out the sun. Diseases that should have wiped them out completely. Predators with claws and teeth that could tear through metal. The ethereal Prime Counselor Nexus floated forward in his sphere. His ancient mind had seen the rise and fall of 100 civilizations. Every species faces challenges during evolution. What makes these humans different? They survived all of it, Veshai said quietly. Every extinction event, every plague, every disaster. And they did not just survive. They became stronger. They became the apex predators of their world. They killed or domesticated everything else. The chamber fell silent. The concept was difficult for many of them to understand. Most of the Dominion species had evolved on peaceful worlds, developing their intelligence and technology over millions of years of stable growth. The idea of a species forged in constant battle was alien to them. Show them the military records, Zethix commanded. The hologram changed again. Now it showed human soldiers in combat. They moved with a coordination that seemed impossible. When one fell, another immediately took his place. When their weapons broke, they picked up rocks and kept fighting. When they were outnumbered, they found ways to turn their environment into weapons. They fought in the frozen wastes of their polar regions. They fought in the crushing depths of their oceans. They fought in the burning heat of their deserts. But the most disturbing footage came from their own conflicts. Humans fighting other humans with a savagery that made hardened hegemony warriors look away, cities reduced to rubble, weapons that could destroy entire continents. And through it all, humans kept fighting, kept adapting, kept surviving. They have a concept they call mutually assured destruction. Veshai continued. They built weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. Then they pointed these weapons at each other for decades. They were willing to kill everyone, including themselves, rather than surrender to an enemy. Admiral Kezon of the Aquatic Collective bubbled in his water tank. Madness. No rational species would risk total extinction over political disputes. That is exactly the point, said Zethix. They are not rational by our standards. Look at their battle doctrines. They teach their soldiers to fight to the last being. They have medals they give to soldiers who die in combat. They celebrate those who sacrifice themselves to kill enemies. Their greatest heroes are not scientists or artists. but warriors who died fighting impossible odds. The hologram showed human children playing games, but these were not peaceful games of learning and cooperation. These were games of war, strategy, and competition. Human children played at being soldiers before they could properly walk. They learned to fight before they learned to read. Their entire culture is built around conflict, Vesahai observed. But not chaotic conflict. Organized conflict. They have turned warfare into a science. They study every battle they have ever fought. They learn from every defeat. They adapt their tactics faster than any species we have encountered. General Korath studied the images of human technology. Their ships were ugly by Dominion standards, built for function rather than beauty. But they were also redundant. Multiple backup systems, multiple ways to accomplish the same task. They were built to keep working even when severely damaged. Their technology may be primitive, Korath admitted, but it is robust. And they advance quickly. According to these records, they went from their first powered flight to landing on their moon in less than 70 years. They went from basic computers to artificial intelligence in 50 years. They achieved nuclear weapons within a century of discovering electricity. The Prime Counselor's sphere pulsed with deep blue light, indicating serious thought. They are advancing too quickly. If we allow them to continue developing for another century, they may become a threat to the Dominion. More than a threat, Zethix corrected. I have run the projections through our most advanced prediction models. If human technological advancement continues at its current rate, and if they maintain their current military culture, they will surpass us within 200 years. Their chaotic innovation combined with their survival instincts could make them the dominant species in this galaxy. The chamber erupted in shocked communication. Thought streams flowed between the ethereals. The crystalline masters grew brighter with agitation. The hegemony warriors roared their disbelief. Impossible, Admiral Kezon bubbled. We have ruled for millennia. We have conquered everything. How could primitives threaten the Dominion? Because, said Vesahai slowly, we conquered everything through superior technology and intelligence. But these humans conquered their world through pure survival instinct. They are what happens when evolution chooses violence over intelligence, adaptation over stability. They are the ultimate survivors. The Prime Counselor raised one ethereal hand for silence. Then the solution is clear. We cannot allow them to develop further. The purification fleet will be assembled. Our 12 greatest champions will lead the most powerful armada in Dominion history. These humans will be eliminated before they can become a threat. General Korath nodded approvingly. How much force should we send? A battle group? A full fleet? Everything, Zethix replied coldly. We will send everything. Every advanced ship, every elite warrior, every weapon we have developed over 3 millennia of conquest. We will not make the mistake of underestimating them, simply because their technology is primitive. We will crush them completely and ensure that no trace of their dangerous evolution remains in this galaxy. The Council voted unanimously. Within days, the greatest military force in galactic history began assembling at the edge of human space. 12 champions, each representing the pinnacle of their species' military might, prepared to lead the final battle against humanity. None of them suspected they were about to encounter something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The purification fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, like a wave of death. 12 massive command ships led the armada, each one a masterpiece of alien engineering. The ethereal flagship Mindrender pulsed with psychic energy that could crush minds across light years. The crystalline dreadnought Eternal Facet was built from living diamond and armed with weapons that could crack planets. The hegemony warship Iron Fist bristled with enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. Behind these flagships came 600 ships of the line. Destroyers that could move faster than thought. Cruisers armed with weapons that manipulated reality itself. Carriers filled with fighter craft piloted by warriors who had never known defeat. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Admiral Caney, the human commander of Earth's orbital defense network, watched the alien fleet appear on his screens with grim determination. He had known this day would come. The deep space monitoring stations had detected the alien scouts months ago. Humanity had been preparing for war ever since. All ships, this is Admiral Caney. He broadcast on all military frequencies. They came here to wipe us out. Show them what happens when someone threatens the human race. The aliens expected the humans to flee or surrender when they saw the size of the purification fleet. They had seen other species react this way: panic, despair, sometimes desperate attempts at negotiation. But the humans did something different. They attacked. The first wave of human ships was pathetic by Dominion standards. Converted cargo haulers with improvised armor plating, mining vessels fitted with military-grade lasers, even civilian passenger ships loaded with nuclear warheads. But they came at the alien fleet with a fury that shocked the Dominion commanders. "What are they doing?" General Korath demanded as he watched a human cargo ship ram itself directly into the shields of an alien destroyer. The ship exploded in a ball of nuclear fire, taking the destroyer with it. That ship had no chance of survival. Why did they attack? The answer came from every direction at once. More human ships converged on the alien fleet, each one fighting with the desperation of a cornered animal. They used tactics the aliens had never seen before. Human pilots would damage their own ships to get closer to alien vessels. They would overload their reactors to create massive explosions. They turned everything into weapons. Captain Sarah Chen piloted her fighter into the hangar bay of a crystalline cruiser. Her ship was already venting atmosphere from multiple hits, but she kept flying. As alien fighter craft swarmed around her, she broadcast her final message: "Remember me when you're dancing on their graves." Her ship exploded inside the alien hangar, destroying 12 enemy fighters and crippling the cruiser's launch systems. But she was just one of hundreds of human pilots making similar sacrifices. The ethereal commander Zethix tried to use his psychic powers to break the humans' will to fight. He had done this countless times before with other species. Fear was a universal constant. Every intelligent being feared death. But when his mental probes touched human minds, he recoiled in shock. The humans were afraid. They were terrified, but they kept fighting anyway. Their minds were compartmentalized in ways he had never encountered. Even when he filled them with overwhelming dread, parts of their consciousness continued to function independently. They felt the fear and ignored it. They accepted death and continued fighting. "Impossible," Zethix whispered. "How do they resist mental domination?" Dr. Vesahai watched the tactical displays from her flagship and began to understand. They are not resisting it. They are working around it. Look at their brain scans. Human consciousness is not centralized like ours. It is distributed across multiple neural networks. Even if you dominate one part of their mind, the rest continues to function. The battle moved into Earth's orbital space. Human space stations became fortresses. Every asteroid had been hollowed out and filled with weapons. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a weapon. But the aliens had superior technology. Slowly, methodically, they began to destroy human defenses. Orbital platforms exploded under alien bombardment. Space stations were cracked open like eggs. The human fleet was being overwhelmed. That was when the humans revealed their true nature. As alien forces moved toward Earth itself, they encountered something unexpected. The planet was not defended by a traditional military force. It was defended by the entire human species. Every city had anti-aircraft weapons. Every civilian building had been reinforced. Every human being was armed and ready to fight. The hegemony warriors who landed on Earth's surface expected to face an organized military resistance. Instead, they found themselves fighting civilians who had turned office buildings into fortresses. Human children threw explosives from rooftops. Human elderly used sniper rifles from windows. Human doctors treated wounded soldiers, then picked up weapons and joined the fighting. "They fight like insects," General Korath reported to the fleet. "No matter how many we kill, more keep coming. Every human seems willing to die to kill just one of us." Admiral Kazon's aquatic forces tried to invade through Earth's oceans. But the humans had prepared for that too. They had filled the seas with mines, automated weapons platforms, and hunter-killer submarines. More importantly, they had human divers who attacked alien ships with nothing but explosives strapped to their bodies. "This is not warfare," Kazon bubbled in distress. "This is madness. They are destroying themselves to hurt us." But the worst shock came when the aliens tried to capture human technology. They expected primitive computers and simple weapons. Instead, they found systems that seemed to learn and adapt in real time. Human artificial intelligence was crude compared to Dominion technology, but it was also completely unpredictable. When alien hackers tried to infiltrate human computer networks, they found chaos. Human AI systems did not think logically. They used random processes, creative leaps, and intuitive guesses. Alien cyber weapons designed to attack logical systems were useless against human computers that operated on controlled randomness. Their machines think like they do, Dr. Vesai observed with growing concern. Chaotic, unpredictable, but surprisingly effective. Captain Torres of the human frigate Defiance demonstrated this chaos perfectly. When his ship was surrounded by alien vessels, he did not retreat or surrender. Instead, he broadcast human music over all communication channels while his crew jury-rigged their life support systems into an improvised weapon. "You want to see how humans fight?" Torres laughed over the radio as his ship began to glow with unstable energy. "We turn everything into a weapon. Everything." The Defiance exploded with the force of a small star, taking 3 alien ships with it. But the explosion also disabled the shields of a dozen more alien vessels, allowing other human ships to destroy them. This pattern repeated across the entire battle zone. Humans turned their own deaths into weapons. They used their destruction to create opportunities for other humans. Every human loss made the remaining humans fight harder. High Commander Zethix realized they had made a terrible mistake. "These humans do not fight to win," he told the other commanders. "They fight to ensure we lose. Even if they die, they are winning as long as they hurt us." The Purification Fleet had expected to face a primitive species that would crumble under superior firepower. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to become more dangerous as they became more desperate. Every human defeat led to new tactics. Every human death inspired greater resistance. As the battle raged on, the aliens began to notice something else. The humans were learning. They were studying alien technology in the middle of combat, figuring out how it worked and finding ways to counter it. Human ships that should have been destroyed were staying in the fight longer. Human weapons that should have been ineffective were suddenly punching through alien shields. "They are adapting," Dr. Vesahai reported with growing alarm. "In the middle of battle, they are reverse engineering our technology and improving their own." "How is this possible?" The answer came from a captured human soldier. Under interrogation, he laughed at his alien captors. "You think this is hard for us? You should see what we do to each other. You're just another predator trying to eat us. We've been dealing with predators for millions of years." As night fell over the burning earth, both sides prepared for the next phase of battle. The aliens had superior technology and numbers, but the humans had something the aliens were beginning to fear: the absolute refusal to surrender no matter the cost. The Purification Fleet had come to exterminate humanity quickly and efficiently. Instead, they found themselves trapped in a grinding war of attrition against an enemy that seemed to thrive on conflict. And for the first time in 3,000 years of conquest, the elite forces of the Dominion began to doubt whether they could win. 3 months into the war, the Purification Fleet faced a problem they had never encountered before. They were losing ships faster than they could replace them. Not from superior alien technology or overwhelming numbers, but from an enemy that refused to fight by any recognizable rules. Dr. Elizabeth Harper worked in the underground laboratories beneath New Geneva, surrounded by pieces of captured alien technology. She had been a theoretical physicist before the war. Now she was something else entirely. She was an evolutionary pressure point, forcing human technology to advance at impossible speeds. "Hand me that power coupling from the crystalline ship," she said to her assistant without looking up from her work. Around her, dozens of human scientists were performing similar miracles. They would capture alien technology in the morning and have modified human versions working by evening. The aliens had expected their technological superiority to end the war quickly. Instead, it became the source of their greatest weakness. Every time they destroyed a human ship, humans would study the wreckage. Every time they lost a ship to humans, humans would take it apart and learn from it. Admiral Caney stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned Terran Vengeance, a ship that would have been impossible 6 months earlier. It was built using human engineering principles but powered by modified alien technology. The fusion reactors came from captured aquatic ships. The shields were based on crystalline energy matrices. The weapons were human kinetic cannons enhanced with ethereal targeting systems. "Status report," Caney ordered. "All systems green." "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Park. "The hybrid systems are performing better than expected. We're getting 30% more power output than the original alien designs." This was the pattern emerging across the human fleet. They were not just copying alien technology, they were improving it. Human engineers approached problems differently than any species the Dominion had encountered. Where aliens pursued elegant, efficient solutions, humans created robust, adaptable ones. Where aliens built systems to work perfectly under ideal conditions, humans built systems to keep working when everything went wrong. Captain Marcus Steele demonstrated this philosophy perfectly. His ship, the Indomitable, had been hit by alien fire 17 times. Any other vessel would have been destroyed. But human engineering kept it fighting. When the main engines failed, backup systems activated. When the backup systems failed, the crew rigged alternative power sources. When those failed, they used manual controls and fought with whatever weapons still functioned. "Sir, we've lost main power, backup power, and tertiary power," reported his engineering officer. "Then we'll use the emergency battery to ram the nearest alien ship," Steele replied calmly. "Load all remaining missiles into the torpedo tubes. When we hit them, we'll give them everything we have left." But before Steele could execute his final attack, something unexpected happened. The Indomitable's power systems came back online, not because of any repair work, but because the ship's AI had figured out how to reroute power through systems that were never designed to carry electrical current. "How is this possible?" Steele demanded. "The AI rewrote its own programming, sir," the engineering officer explained in amazement. "It's using the life support conduits as power cables and the sewage system as a cooling mechanism. It shouldn't work, but it does." This was happening throughout the human fleet. Human artificial intelligence was evolving during combat. Unlike alien AI systems, which were programmed to think logically and efficiently, human AI was designed to be creative and intuitive. When faced with impossible problems, it found impossible solutions. The aliens were beginning to understand that they were not just fighting human beings. They were fighting human ingenuity itself. Every challenge made humans more creative. Every setback forced them to innovate. Every loss taught them something new. General Korath learned this lesson personally when his forces tried to capture a human research facility on Mars. The facility was defended by only 50 human soldiers, while he commanded 2,000 elite hegemony warriors. It should have been an easy victory. Instead, it became a nightmare. The humans had turned the entire facility into a weapon. Corridors were rigged with explosives. Rooms had hidden compartments where humans could appear and disappear like ghosts. Even the air conditioning system had been weaponized, pumping toxic gas into areas occupied by alien forces. "This is not a military installation," Korath realized as his warriors fought room by room through the facility. "This is a trap. They built this entire facility to kill anyone who tried to capture it." But the real shock came when Korath finally reached the central laboratory. Instead of finding human scientists cowering in fear, he found them calmly working on new weapons while battle raged around them. They had been using the attack as a test environment for their latest innovations. "You're about to be overrun," Korath told the lead scientist through his translator. "Why are you not afraid?" Dr. Sarah Kim looked up from her work with genuine confusion. "Afraid? This is the best research opportunity we've had in months. We're finally getting to test our weapons against live targets. Thank you for volunteering." Before Korath could respond, the entire facility exploded. The humans had rigged it with charges from the beginning. They never intended to hold it. They had used his own attack to test their weapons, gathered data on alien combat capabilities, and then destroyed everything to prevent alien forces from learning anything useful. Korath survived the explosion, but barely. As he was pulled from the wreckage by his remaining warriors, he sent a message to the fleet command. "These humans are not defending their territory. They are conducting experiments on us." This realization spread through the alien fleet like a virus. The humans were not just fighting to survive. They were learning from every engagement. They were studying alien tactics, technology, and biology. They were treating the entire war as a massive research project. Admiral Kezon discovered this when his forces captured a human submarine in Earth's Pacific Ocean. He expected to find terrified prisoners. Instead, he found humans who seemed genuinely excited to meet alien life forms. They asked questions about alien biology, technology, and culture. They wanted to understand how alien society worked. At first, Kezon thought this was some kind of psychological warfare. But the humans seemed genuinely curious. Even while being held prisoner, they were learning. They observed alien behavior, memorized alien technology, and somehow managed to communicate this information to other humans. How are they doing this? Kazan demanded when he realized that human forces were already adapting to counter-tactics that his prisoners had just observed. We monitor all their communications. How are they sharing information so quickly? The answer came from Dr. Veshai, who had been studying captured human equipment. They have multiple communication methods, electronic signals that we can intercept, but also chemical signals, behavioral cues, and even artistic expressions that carry encoded information. They are sharing data through their entertainment broadcasts, their news reports, and their social interactions. High Commander Zethix tried to counter this by jamming all human communications, but it only made things worse. When humans could not communicate electronically, they found other ways. They used light signals, radio waves, and even patterns of debris from destroyed ships to convey information. More disturbing, human forces seemed to develop collective intelligence during combat. Individual human soldiers would make decisions that only made sense as part of a larger strategy. They would sacrifice their own tactical advantages to create opportunities for humans they had never met. They fought like a single organism with millions of bodies. They are not individuals, Zethix reported to the Dominion Council. They appear to be individuals, but they function as a collective consciousness. When one human learns something, somehow all humans benefit from that knowledge. The war had become something the aliens had never prepared for. They were not fighting a primitive species with inferior technology. They were fighting evolution itself. Every human death made the remaining humans stronger. Every alien victory taught humans new lessons. Every day of conflict made humanity more dangerous. Dr. Veshai ran the projections and came to a terrifying conclusion. At current rates of adaptation, human technology will surpass ours within 18 months. Their tactical innovation is already superior to ours, and their motivation appears to be limitless. The purification fleet had been sent to quickly exterminate humanity before they could become a threat. Instead, they had become the catalyst for humanity's rapid evolution. They had turned humans from a potential future threat into an immediate present danger. As the war entered its 4th month, alien commanders began to realize they were no longer hunting humans. They were being hunted, and their prey was learning faster than they could adapt. The first champion to fall was Admiral Thexlar of the Ethereal Fleet. He had ruled the minds of entire planets, bending civilizations to his will with pure psychic force. For 800 years, no enemy had been able to resist his mental domination. But the humans were different. Thexlar tried to crush the mind of Captain Jennifer Reyes as her damaged fighter approached his flagship. He poured all his psychic power into her brain, filling her thoughts with terror, despair, and the overwhelming urge to surrender. For a moment it worked. Reyes screamed as alien thoughts invaded her consciousness. But then something impossible happened. Parts of her mind that Thexlar had not touched began to compensate for the parts he had dominated. Human consciousness was not centralized like alien minds. It was distributed, redundant, and adaptable. Even while Thexlar controlled her fear responses, other parts of her brain continued to fly the ship. "How are you still fighting?" Thexlar demanded, his psychic voice echoing in her mind. "I control your thoughts. I am your will now." Reyes laughed, even as tears of terror streamed down her face. "You control part of my thoughts. But I've got more where those came from." Her fighter slammed into the bridge of Thexlar's flagship, and both ships exploded in a ball of nuclear fire. As he died, Thexlar sent one final message to the surviving champions. The humans compartmentalize their consciousness. Mental domination only affects portions of their minds. The rest continues to function independently. They fight like their brains are multiple beings working together. General Korath received this message while leading the siege of Luna City. Human defenders had turned the moon's underground tunnels into a maze of death traps. His warriors, the finest soldiers in the galaxy, were being systematically hunted by human civilians who had learned to fight in zero gravity. Impossible. Korath growled as another squad of his elite troops was eliminated by human children using improvised explosives. These are not soldiers. These are non-combatants. How are they defeating trained warriors? The answer came from Sergeant Maria Santos, a human defender who had been a schoolteacher before the war. As Korath cornered her in a tunnel junction, she calmly explained while arming a fusion grenade. "You trained your soldiers to fight other soldiers," she said. "We trained our civilians to fight anything that tries to kill them. Your warriors expect enemies to follow military tactics. We don't follow any tactics, we just survive." The grenade exploded, collapsing the tunnel and burying Korath's entire assault force. But before he died, Korath understood what the humans had done. They had not created a military force. They had turned their entire species into a military force. Every human was a potential soldier. Every human building was a potential fortress. Every human tool was a potential weapon. Admiral Kezon of the Aquatic Collective fell next. His deep-sea forces had dominated ocean warfare for millennia. No species could match their ability to fight in underwater environments. But humans had spent their entire evolutionary history fighting in every environment their planet could create. Kezon's forces encountered human submariners in the depths of Earth's Mariana Trench. The humans were fighting in crushing pressure that should have killed them instantly. They wore crude pressure suits and used weapons that barely functioned in the extreme environment. But they kept fighting. How do they survive at these depths? Kezon bubbled in confusion as human divers attacked his flagship with nothing but explosive charges. The pressure should crush their fragile bodies. Chief Petty Officer Jackson Davis answered by ramming his suit's propulsion system directly into Kezon's command chamber. As the alien admiral died in the implosion, Davis's final transmission explained everything. We've been fighting our planet for millions of years. Your ocean is just another day at the office. Dr. Vesahai of the Crystalline Masters lasted longer than the others, but her end was the most disturbing. She prided herself on logical analysis and rational thought. But humans had turned logic itself into a weapon. Vesahai captured Dr. Elizabeth Harper during a raid on a human research facility. She expected to interrogate a primitive scientist and learn about human technology. Instead, she found herself engaged in a philosophical discussion that gradually undermined her entire worldview. Your technology is impressive, Harper admitted while chained in Vesahai's laboratory. But it's also predictable. You build things to work perfectly under ideal conditions. We build things to work when everything goes wrong. Chaos is inefficient, Vesahai replied, her crystalline body pulsing with confidence. Order creates progress. Logic creates advancement, does it? Harper asked. Your fleet came here with perfect logic. You analyzed us, made rational plans, and executed them flawlessly. How's that working out for you? Vesahai began to explain how Dominion's strategy was superior, but as she spoke, she realized Harper was right. Every logical assumption the aliens had made about humans had been wrong. Every rational prediction had failed. Human irrationality had become a tactical advantage. You're using our logic against us, Vesahai whispered in growing horror. We're using everything against you, Harper confirmed. That's what humans do. We take whatever is trying to kill us and turn it into a tool for survival. Your logic, your technology, your tactics, we'll learn from all of it and use it to defeat you. Vesahai tried to execute Harper immediately, but it was too late. During their conversation, Harper had been studying crystalline technology and biology. She had learned enough to sabotage Vesahai's ship from within her prison cell. The entire laboratory exploded as Harper triggered a cascade failure in the ship's crystalline matrix. Commander Vorthak of the Hegemony Guard was the last champion to fall. He had led the most elite warriors in the galaxy, soldiers who had conquered 1,000 worlds. But humans had turned warfare itself into something unrecognizable. Vorthak's final battle took place on a human space station that should have been destroyed weeks earlier. Instead, the humans had kept it operational through sheer stubborn determination. They had turned every corridor into a killing field, every room into a bunker, every piece of equipment into a weapon. This is not war, Vorthak reported to the surviving alien commanders as his forces fought through the station's maze-like interior. This is something else. The humans have turned their own destruction into a weapon against us. As Vorthak's warriors advanced, they found human defenders who had been fighting without food, water, or medical supplies for days. But instead of weakening them, the extreme conditions seemed to make them more dangerous. They fought with the desperation of cornered animals and the intelligence of tactical geniuses. Sir, the humans have rigged the station's reactor to explode, reported Vorthak's aide. They're going to destroy themselves and us together. Then we withdraw, Vorthak ordered. But as his forces tried to retreat, they discovered the humans had predicted this response. Every escape route had been mined. Every corridor had been turned into a trap. The humans had not just planned to destroy the station. They had planned to ensure maximum alien casualties when they did. Vorthak's final transmission was sent as the station's reactor went critical. We are not fighting a military force. We are fighting evolution itself. These humans have weaponized the concept of survival. They do not fight to win. They fight to ensure we cannot win. Even in death, they are defeating us. The explosion destroyed the station, all remaining human defenders, and Vorthak's entire assault force. But it also sent a clear message to the surviving alien fleet. Humanity would not surrender, would not retreat, and would not stop fighting until every last human was dead, or every alien invader was destroyed. High Commander Zethix found himself commanding a fleet that had lost half its ships and all its champions. The remaining alien forces were demoralized, confused, and terrified. They had come to exterminate a primitive species. Instead, they had awakened something that seemed to embody the concept of war itself. Send a message to the Dominion Council, Zethix ordered his communications officer. Tell them we have failed. Tell them we did not encounter a primitive species. We encountered predators who have turned warfare into an art form. And tell them that we may have taught them everything they need to know to destroy the entire Dominion. As the message was transmitted across the galaxy, Zethix prepared for his own final battle. The humans were coming for the remaining alien ships, and he knew they would not show mercy. They had learned too much from fighting the Purification Fleet. They had evolved too far beyond what they had been when the war began. The hunters had become the hunted, and the prey had become apex predators. 6 months had passed since the Purification Fleet had arrived to exterminate humanity. The Dominion Council waited in their great chamber, listening to nothing but silence from the expedition force. No status reports, no victory announcements, no requests for reinforcement, just empty space where their greatest military achievement should have been. High Counselor Nexus floated in his sphere, his ancient mind reaching across the galaxy toward the Sol system. What he found there filled him with a dread he had not felt in 3,000 years of conquest. The psychic signatures were all wrong. Where once there had been a young, chaotic species struggling with primitive technology, now there was something else entirely. Prepare the emergency council session, Nexus commanded. Something has happened to our fleet. Before the council could convene, their communication arrays detected an incoming transmission. The signal was strong, directed specifically at their hidden homeworlds using communication frequencies that were supposed to be secret. The technology behind the transmission was a mixture of alien engineering that the Dominion recognized as their own, combined with something else they did not understand. The holographic display activated, and the assembled leaders of 12 species found themselves looking at a human being. Admiral Sarah Caney stood on the bridge of a ship that defied everything. The Dominion thought they knew about human capabilities. The vessel behind her was clearly built using human design principles, but it incorporated technology from every species in the Purification Fleet. Crystalline energy matrices provided power. Ethereal navigation systems guided its course. Hegemony weapon systems lined its hull, but it was all integrated in ways that no Dominion engineer would have attempted. Greetings to the Dominion Council, Admiral Caney said, her voice carrying clearly across the light years. I am Admiral Sarah Kane of the Terran Defense Force. I believe you sent some friends to visit us. I'm afraid they won't be returning. The council chamber erupted in shocked communication. Thought streams flowed between the ethereals. The crystalline masters grew brighter with agitation. The remaining hegemony representatives roared their disbelief. Impossible, General Korath's replacement declared. The Purification Fleet was the greatest military force in galactic history. No primitive species could defeat them. Admiral Caney smiled, and something in that expression made several council members step backward. You're right. No primitive species could defeat them. But we're not primitive anymore. Thank you for the education. The transmission shifted to show views from around the Sol system. Where once there had been a few human colonies struggling to survive in the hostile environment of space, now there was something that resembled a fortress. The asteroid belt had been converted into a massive shipyard. The outer planets bristled with defensive installations. And everywhere, ships that combined human innovation with captured alien technology patrolled the system's borders. Your fleet taught us many valuable lessons, Caney continued. We learned about faster-than-light communication. We learned about energy manipulation. We learned about psychic technology and crystalline matrices and antimatter containment. Most importantly, we learned about you. The display changed to show detailed technical readouts of Dominion technology. blueprints for alien ships, biological analyses of alien species, strategic assessments of alien military capabilities. The humans had not just defeated the purification fleet, they had dissected it, studied it, and learned everything it had to teach. This is not possible, Dr. Vesahai's replacement whispered. Our technology is the result of millions of years of development. They could not master it in mere months. You're thinking like an alien, Caney replied, somehow hearing the crystalline being's words. You develop technology over millions of years because you have millions of years. We develop technology as fast as we can because we might die tomorrow. Your fleet gave us 6 months of intensive education. We made the most of it. The transmission showed human scientists working with captured alien equipment. But they were not just copying it. They were improving it, modifying it, combining it in ways that the original designers had never considered. Human engineers approached problems differently than any species the Dominion had encountered. Where aliens pursued perfection, humans pursued functionality. Where aliens built elegant solutions, humans built adaptable ones. But why show us this? High Counselor Nexus asked, his psychic voice reaching across space. If you have truly defeated our fleet, why reveal your capabilities to us? Admiral Caney's expression became serious. Because we want you to understand your situation clearly. We have your technology now. We have your tactical knowledge. We have detailed scans of your homeworlds and complete intelligence on your military capabilities. We know everything about you that your fleet knew. And we have something your fleet didn't have. What? Nexus demanded. Time to prepare. The display changed again, showing human ships leaving the Sol system. Dozens of vessels, each one incorporating the best of human and alien technology. They were moving toward the edge of Dominion space, not as refugees or explorers, but as an invasion force. We estimate it will take us approximately 18 months to reach your core worlds, Caney continued. During that time, we will be visiting your colonies, your outposts, and your allies. We will be learning everything we can about your civilization. We will be growing stronger with every encounter. Admiral Kazan's replacement bubbled frantically in his tank. This is madness. You cannot hope to defeat the entire Dominion with a few dozen ships. You're right, Caney agreed. A few dozen ships couldn't defeat your entire civilization. But we're not sending a few dozen ships. We're sending humanity itself. The transmission showed something that made the council members recoil in horror. Human ships were not just carrying weapons and soldiers. They were carrying entire populations. Families, scientists, engineers, children, all traveling together toward Dominion space. This was not a military expedition. This was a migration. You see, Caney explained, your fleet taught us something very important about ourselves. We're not just good at surviving in hostile environments. We're good at making hostile environments into home. Every world we encounter we'll adapt to. Every challenge we face we'll overcome. Every species we meet will either befriend or replace. High Counselor Nexus felt something he had not experienced in millennia. Absolute terror. The humans were not coming to conquer the Dominion. They were coming to replace it. They were approaching galactic civilization like they had approached everything else in their evolutionary history, as an environmental challenge to be mastered. What do you want? Nexus asked desperately. We want you to surrender, Caney replied simply. We want you to acknowledge that humanity is now the dominant species in this galaxy. We want you to integrate into our civilization on our terms. We're offering you the same choice you gave us. Submit or be eliminated. The council chamber fell silent. For 3,000 years they had been the ones making such ultimatums. Now they were receiving one from a species they had tried to exterminate just months earlier. And if we refuse? General Korath's replacement demanded. Admiral Caney's smile returned, and this time it was genuinely terrifying. Then we'll do to your entire civilization what we did to your purification fleet. We'll study you, learn from you, and then replace you. The difference is this time we'll have 18 months to prepare instead of 6 months to react. The transmission included detailed intelligence reports on every Dominion world. Population centers, military installations, industrial facilities, government buildings. Humans had somehow gathered complete intelligence on the entire Dominion civilization. They knew where every important alien lived, where every critical facility was located, where every strategic resource was stored. Your choice, Caney concluded. Coexistence under human leadership or extinction. We've learned to be very good at both options. You have 72 hours to decide. The transmission ended, leaving the Dominion Council in shocked silence. After 3,000 years of unchallenged rule, they faced the choice they had given to hundreds of other species: surrender or die. High Counselor Nexus cast his ancient mind across the galaxy one more time, searching for any sign of hope. What he found instead was confirmation of humanity's claims. Human ships were indeed approaching Dominion space. Human technology was indeed superior to their own now, and most terrifying of all, human determination was absolutely unbreakable. 71 hours later, the Dominion Council transmitted their surrender to the approaching human fleet. The age of alien rule was over. The age of humanity had begun. Admiral Caney received the surrender while standing on the bridge of her flagship, surrounded by human and alien officers working together to build something new. They were no longer just defending humanity. They were creating a new kind of civilization, one built on human values of adaptation, innovation, and survival. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Park, "we're receiving surrender transmissions from all Dominion member species. They're requesting terms for integration into human civilization." Caney nodded, looking out at the stars that now belonged to humanity. "Send them our standard response, welcome to the galaxy's new apex species." The cantina on Kepler Station was dark and smoky. Strange music played from hidden speakers, mixing sounds from a dozen different worlds. The air smelled of alien alcohol and fear sweat from too many species to count. In the back corner, where the lights barely reached, sat a creature that had seen too much war. Zixtal was a Vorthak, standing nearly 8 feet tall when he bothered to stand straight. His body looked like a cross between a mantis and a spider, covered in dark green chitin that showed scars from countless battles. 3 of his 6 limbs were missing, replaced by crude metal parts that clicked when he moved. Around his table sat 5 young aliens. They wore fresh uniforms of the Galactic Defense Corps, their ranks so new the paint barely had time to dry. A crystalline named Shardvix caught the light like a living diamond. Next to him, a furry wolven called Gruff kept his ears up and alert. The small, quick skitter called Zip bounced in her chair, unable to sit still. A tall, thin ethereal named Wind floated slightly above his seat. Finally, there was Rock, a massive stone-like being from the heavy worlds. They had been drinking for hours, celebrating their new assignments. Their talk had grown loud and boastful. "The humans think they are so tough," Gruff said, showing his sharp teeth in what passed for a grin among his people. "But they only just learned to travel between stars. We have been doing it for thousands of years." Shardvix's crystal body flashed with amusement. "Their weapons are so primitive. Chemical explosives and metal bullets. We have energy weapons that can cut through their ships like paper." Zip giggled, a sound like breaking glass. "And they are so slow. We can move faster, think faster, fight faster. What could they possibly teach us about war?" Rock's voice rumbled like an earthquake. "They come from one small world. We come from an empire that spans half the galaxy. There is no comparison." Wind's voice whispered like moving air. "I heard they still fight with their hands sometimes." "How barbaric." Zixtal had been quiet through all of this, slowly sipping a drink that would poison most other species. His mechanical limbs clicked softly against his glass. Finally, he set the drink down and looked at the young soldiers. "You think you know war?" he said. His voice came through a translator, but the machine could not hide the deep weariness in his tone. "You think your technology and your speed and your energy weapons make you strong?" The table went quiet. Zixtal was old even by Vorthak standards. His scars told stories of battles across the galaxy. When he spoke of war, smart soldiers listened. "Let me tell you about the humans," Zixtal continued. "Let me tell you why every soldier who has fought beside them or against them learns to fear that species." Gruff laughed, but it sounded nervous. "Fear them. They are barely out of their caves." Zixtal's compound eyes fixed on the young wolven. "I have seen a human soldier walk through hard vacuum wearing nothing but emergency breathing gear. I have watched them charge energy weapons with metal knives. I have seen them give their own food to enemy prisoners while they starved." "That sounds stupid, not scary," Zip said, but her bouncing had stopped. "Stupid?" Zixtal's mechanical arm reached across the table and picked up an empty glass. He squeezed and the metal fingers crushed it to powder. "Let me tell you what is stupid. Stupid is thinking you understand an enemy, because you know their technology. Stupid is believing that faster ships or better weapons win wars." He leaned forward, his alien face coming into the light. The scars were worse than they had looked in the shadows. One side of his head was mostly metal, including one of his compound eyes. Humans do not fight like us. They do not think like us. They do not value the same things we do, and that makes them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Shardvik's crystal body had stopped flashing. Dangerous how? They do not fear death the way we do, Zixtal said. We fight to win. We fight for territory or resources or glory. Humans fight for ideas, for people they have never met, for futures they will never see. The old veteran picked up his drink again. His mechanical hand shook slightly. I fought in the border wars. I was at the siege of Proxima Fortress. I saw what they did there. He paused, staring into his glass. That was the first time I understood that humans were not like other species. Wind leaned forward, his ethereal form shifting with interest. What happened at Proxima Fortress? It was supposed to be impossible to take, Zixtal said. Built into an asteroid, shields that could stop any weapon we had, automated defenses that never missed. The mathematics said it would take years to reduce through siege. He took another drink. The humans took it in 6 hours. The young soldiers looked at each other. Rock spoke first, his voice quiet for once. How? That is what I am going to tell you, Zixtal said. That and other stories. Stories that will help you understand what you are dealing with when you meet humans in battle. Gruff's ears had flattened against his head. Why are you telling us this? Zixtal's laugh was like grinding metal. Because some of you will serve with humans. Some of you might even fight against them. Either way, you need to know what they are capable of. He gestured with one of his real arms at the cantina around them. Look at this place. A neutral station on the edge of nowhere. 5 years ago, this sector was a war zone. 3 different species fighting over mining rights. Thousands dying every day. What changed? Shardvix asked. Humans arrived, Zixtal said simply. They did not pick a side. They did not try to mediate. They just started protecting anyone who asked for help. Refugee ships, medical transports, supply runs to civilian stations. He finished his drink. The war ended in 6 months. Not because anyone won. Because everyone realized they were fighting in front of children who had learned to walk between the stars. Zip's voice was very small. You make them sound like heroes. Heroes, monsters, saints, demons. Zixtal shrugged, a gesture that looked strange on his insect-like body. Humans are all of these things, sometimes in the same battle, sometimes in the same soldier. He stood up, his mechanical limbs whirring softly. That is what makes them frightening. You never know which one you're going to meet. The old veteran started to walk away, then stopped and looked back at the table of young soldiers. Let me give you some advice. If you ever find yourself fighting alongside humans, follow their lead. They know things about war that we are still learning. If you find yourself fighting against them, he paused, his mechanical eye focusing on each of them in turn. Pray to whatever gods you believe in, that you never have to find out what that is like. With that, Zixtal walked away, leaving the 5 young aliens sitting in uncomfortable silence. The cantina suddenly felt much colder, and the shadows seemed deeper. Shardvix was the first to speak. Do you think he was telling the truth? None of them answered. But when they ordered their next round of drinks, none of them talked about humans being primitive anymore. Outside the cantina's windows, ships moved through space like slow fish in a dark sea. Some of them were human ships, unremarkable-looking vessels that moved with quiet purpose. The young soldiers watched them pass and wondered what stories those ships could tell. In the distance, barely visible against the stars, was a small blue world where a species called humanity had learned to reach for the sky. It looked peaceful from here, but then so had Proxima Fortress. The next day, the 5 young soldiers found themselves back at the same table in the cantina. They had not planned to meet there, but somehow they all ended up in the same place at the same time. None of them had slept well after hearing Zixtal's words. The old Vorthak was already there when they arrived, sitting in his corner like he had never left. His mechanical limbs clicked softly as he nursed another glass of his poisonous drink. Gruff was the first to approach. His ears were still flat against his head, a sign of nervousness among his people. You said you would tell us about Proxima Fortress. Zixtal looked up at them with his one good eye and one mechanical one. Sit down then. This is not a story you hear standing up. They arranged themselves around the table again. Shardvik's crystal body was dimmer today, and Zip had stopped bouncing entirely. Rock seemed smaller somehow despite his massive size. Wind floated closer to the table than before. Zixtal set down his glass and stared into the distance, as if he was seeing something far away in space and time. Proxima Fortress was the pride of the hegemony, he began. Built into a solid iron asteroid 30 kilometers across. The best shields money could buy, powered by fusion reactors deep in the core. Automated defense systems that could track and destroy 1,000 targets at once. He paused to take a drink. It controlled the hyperspace route between 3 star systems. As long as the hegemony held it, they could cut off supplies to half our territory. We had been trying to take it for 2 years, lost 60 ships and 30,000 soldiers. Zip's voice was quiet. What made it so hard to attack? Everything, Zixtal said. The shields could absorb the full firepower of a fleet. The defenses never got tired, never made mistakes. The fortress itself was buried so deep in the asteroid that even if you got through the shields, you would need nuclear weapons to crack it open. He gestured with one mechanical arm. And nuclear weapons would destroy everything inside, including the strategic computers we needed to capture. It was a perfect trap. We could not leave it alone, but we could not take it either. Shardvix leaned forward. So what changed? Humans, Zixtal said simply. They showed up with a fleet of ships that looked like garbage. Old cargo haulers, mining vessels, even a few passenger liners. Our admirals laughed. What could these primitive ships do against Proxima Fortress? The old veteran's mechanical eye whirred as it focused. The human commander was named Sarah Chen. Small woman, looked like she should be teaching children instead of fighting wars. She asked to see our battle plans, studied them for about 10 minutes. Then she asked a question that made everyone think she was crazy. What did she ask? Wind whispered. She wanted to know if our shields worked both ways. The young soldiers looked confused. Rock spoke first. What does that mean? It means, Zixtal said, that our shields were designed to keep energy weapons out, but they also kept everything else in, including air, heat, and electromagnetic pulses. He picked up his glass and rolled it between his mechanical fingers. Chen's plan was simple. Load cargo ships with soldiers and crash them into the shields at full speed. The electromagnetic pulse from the impact would create temporary gaps, big enough for individual soldiers to slip through. Gruff's ears shot up. That is suicide. Those soldiers would be flying into hard vacuum with no protection. That is what we told her, Zixtal said. She just smiled and said her people were used to hostile environments. The old veteran stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars gleamed like distant jewels. The attack began at 0300 station time. 12 cargo ships, each one loaded with 50 human soldiers. They accelerated to ramming speed and hit the shields like hammers hitting glass. His voice grew quiet. I was watching from the command ship. I expected to see explosions, debris, maybe a few lucky survivors in escape pods. Instead, I saw something that still gives me nightmares. He turned back to the table. The ships hit the shields and broke apart, but the humans inside did not die. They came out of the wreckage wearing emergency breathing gear and magnetic boots, and they started walking across the surface of the fortress. Zip made a small sound of disbelief. Walking? In vacuum? Walking, Zixtal confirmed. Like they were taking a stroll in a park. The fortress defenses opened fire immediately. Energy beams that could cut through ship armor. The humans just kept walking. He sat back down, his mechanical limbs clicking. They moved in perfect formation. When one soldier was hit, the others would drag him to cover and continue the mission. They carried chemical explosives, simple bombs that our technology said should not work against the fortress armor. Shardvix's crystal body flashed with confusion. How could primitive explosives work where our weapons failed? Because they were not trying to break through the armor, Zixtal said. They were targeting the weak points. Sensor arrays, communication dishes, shield generators, places where the fortress needed to interact with the outside universe. He took another drink. The human soldiers worked for 3 hours in hard vacuum while under constant fire. They placed their charges with mathematical precision. Every explosion was calculated to cause maximum damage to the fortress systems. But how did they survive the vacuum? Wind asked. Most species die in seconds without environmental suits. Zixtal's laugh was bitter. That is the thing about humans. They come from a world that is constantly trying to kill them. Extreme temperatures, poisonous atmosphere, radiation from their star. They learn to survive in conditions that would kill most of us instantly. He gestured at his mechanical limbs. I lost these in the assault. Took shrapnel when the shield generators finally overloaded. but I was inside an armored combat suit in a pressurized ship. The humans were outside in vacuum and they kept fighting. The cantina was quiet except for the distant hum of the station's life support systems. When the shields finally fell, Chen's people had disabled 70% of the fortress defenses. Our ships moved in for the final assault. What should have taken days took 6 hours. Rock's voice rumbled like distant thunder. How many humans died? That is the strangest part, Zixtal said. 18 soldiers were killed in the initial crashes. 37 were wounded during the assault. But most of them survived. They just adapted to fighting in vacuum like it was a minor inconvenience. He looked at each of the young soldiers in turn. After the battle, I asked Chen how her people could do such things. She looked at me like I had asked why water was wet. We do what needs to be done, she said. That is what humans do. Zip's voice was barely audible. That is impossible. I watched it happen, Zixtal said. I have the recordings if you want to see them. But I warn you, they are not easy to watch. Shardvix asked the question they were all thinking. What happened to Commander Chen? She survived the war, Zixtal said. Last I heard, she was running a refugee camp on the edge of hegemony space, protecting civilians from raiders and pirates. He finished his drink and set the glass down with a click. That is what you need to understand about humans. They do not fight for glory or conquest. They fight because someone needs to be protected, and they will walk through hell itself to do it. The old veteran stood up again. Tomorrow I will tell you about the Thresh labor camps, about what humans do when they find cruelty in the universe. His mechanical eye focused on them. That story is harder to hear than this one. As Zixtal walked away, the 5 young soldiers sat in silence. Outside the window, human ships continued their slow dance through space, carrying secrets and stories that the galaxy was only beginning to understand. Gruff spoke first, his voice uncertain. Do you think we could do what those soldiers did? None of them answered, but they all looked out at the stars and wondered what other impossible things humans might consider normal. In the distance, Proxima Fortress still orbited its star, now a peaceful research station, but sometimes when the light hit it just right, you could still see the scars where human soldiers had walked across its surface in the cold darkness of space. The third day found the young soldiers waiting in the cantina before Zixtal arrived. They had spent the previous night researching human military actions, trying to understand what they had heard. The more they learned, the more confused they became. When the old Vorthak finally appeared, he looked older than before. His mechanical limbs moved slower and his good eye seemed dimmer. He settled into his chair with the careful movements of someone carrying too much weight. You look tired, Shardvix observed, his crystal body pulsing with concern. Some stories are harder to tell than others, Zixtal said. He ordered his usual drink but did not touch it when it arrived. What I am about to tell you happened 6 months after Proxima Fortress. By then, word had spread about what humans could do in battle. He stared at his untouched glass. The Catherians were losing the war badly, so they decided to change the rules. Instead of fighting soldiers, they started targeting civilians. They built labor camps on occupied worlds, places where they could break the spirit of entire populations. Zip had started bouncing again, but it was nervous energy now, not excitement. Labor camps? Prison planets, Zixtal explained. Entire worlds turned into factories and mines. Families separated. Children used as workers, medical experiments on different species. The Catherians thought if they made the cost of resistance too high, we would surrender. Wyn's ethereal form shimmered with anger. That is against every law of war. Laws only matter if someone enforces them, Zixtal said bitterly. And the Catherians were very good at hiding their camps in systems we could not reach. He finally picked up his drink but only held it. Intelligence. Located a camp on Thresh Prime and met 1,000 prisoners from a dozen different species. The planet was heavily defended, surrounded by minefields and patrol ships. Our strategists said a rescue would be impossible. Gruff leaned forward. But the humans tried anyway. The humans volunteered, Zixtal corrected. When the mission briefing was finished, every human in the room stepped forward. Not just soldiers. Engineers, medics, even cooks. Anyone who could help. He took a small sip of his drink. I was assigned as liaison to the human force. My job was to make sure they followed proper military procedure. I thought I understood what that meant. Rock's voice rumbled with curiosity. What happened? Everything went wrong from the beginning, Zixtal said. The humans ignored the planned approach routes. Instead of attacking the strongest defenses, they targeted the weakest ones. Places where the guards were tired, where the sensors had blind spots. He set down his glass. But that was not the strange part. The strange part was what they carried with them. Weapons, Zip asked. Food, Zixtal said. Medical supplies. Clean water. Blankets. Every human soldier was carrying enough supplies to support 10 people for a week. Their packs were so heavy they could barely move. Shardvik's crystal body flashed with confusion. That makes no military sense. Extra weight slows you down, makes you vulnerable. That is what I told their commander, a man named Rodriguez, Zixtal said. He looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. We are not here to fight a war, he said. We are here to save people. The old veteran's mechanical eye whirred as it focused on each of them. The assault began at dawn. The humans moved like ghosts through the perimeter defenses. They disabled alarm systems, neutralized guard posts, opened gates that had been locked for years. In 3 hours, they had complete control of the camp. He paused, lost in memory. I expected them to secure the area, establish a perimeter, begin processing prisoners for evacuation, standard military procedure. Instead, they did something that made my brain hurt. What? Wind whispered. They started giving away their own supplies, Zixtal said. Food from their own packs, water from their own canteens. A human medic gave his environmental suit to a crystalline prisoner who could not survive in the planet's atmosphere. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I watched a human soldier take off his own boots and give them to a child from the cold worlds. This soldier then walked barefoot across ground that was freezing his feet with every step. Zip stopped bouncing entirely. That is insane. That is what I thought, Zixtal said. I confronted Rodriguez about it. Your soldiers are giving away equipment they need to survive, I told him. This is tactically stupid. The old veteran picked up his glass again but did not drink. Rodriguez looked at me with these calm human eyes and said, What good is our survival if we let others die when we could save them? Shardvik's crystal body had gone completely dim. I do not understand. Neither did I, Zixtal said. Every species I knew fought for advantage. For territory, for resources, for survival. But these humans were giving away their advantages to help their enemies. He took a long drink. Because that is what the prisoners were, technically. Enemies. Citizens of planets that had fought against human colonies. People who had never shown humans any kindness. Gruff's ears were flat against his head again. And the humans saved them anyway? Saved them? Zixtal's laugh was sharp. They adopted them. Human soldiers were carrying wounded aliens on their backs during the evacuation, sharing their food with people who could not even digest it properly, learning alien languages so they could comfort frightened children. He gestured with one mechanical arm. I saw a human sergeant give his weapon to a wolven prisoner so the alien could defend his own family if guards attacked. This sergeant then walked into battle carrying nothing but a metal bar he had torn from a fence. Rock's voice was barely audible.
Did they all survive?
Most of them, Zixtal said. The humans lost 47 soldiers in the operation. Every single one of them died protecting someone else. Not fighting enemy soldiers, not completing military objectives. Protecting people they had never met. The cantina was silent except for the distant hum of machinery. The evacuation took 18 hours. When it was over, we had saved 48,000 prisoners. The humans had given away so much of their own equipment that half of them needed medical treatment for exposure and malnutrition. He finished his drink. That night, I found Rodriguez in the medical bay. He was being treated for frostbite and dehydration. I asked him why his people had done such things, why they had risked their own lives for strangers. Zixtal's mechanical eye focused on the young soldiers. He said something that I will never forget, because that is what people do for each other. That is what makes us human. Wind's ethereal form was shimmering with confusion. But it makes no sense strategically. That is the point, Zixtal said. Humans do not think strategically when they see suffering. They think emotionally. They see a child who is hungry, and they give their own food. They see someone in pain, and they share their medicine. They see danger, and they stand in front of it. He stood up slowly, his mechanical limbs clicking. This is what makes them so frightening in war. Any species can learn to kill efficiently. Any species can master tactics and strategy and technology. But humans fight with something that cannot be programmed or trained or understood. What? Shardovix asked. Love, Zixtal said simply. They fight because they love things more than they fear death. And that makes them capable of anything. The old veteran started to walk away, then stopped. The prisoners from Thresh Prime scattered across the galaxy after the rescue, but every year on the anniversary of their liberation, they send messages to the humans who saved them. Thank you notes, pictures of their children, stories of the lives they were able to live because someone cared enough to risk everything for strangers. He looked back at the table of young soldiers. Rodriguez keeps every single message, thousands of them now. He says they remind him why humans fight wars. As Zixtal disappeared into the shadows, the 5 young aliens sat in stunned silence. Outside the window, ships moved through space, and somewhere among them were humans carrying messages from people they had saved. Gruff spoke first, his voice uncertain. Tomorrow, he said, he would tell us about something called the Glass Planet. They all looked out at the stars and wondered what other impossible things humans might do when the galaxy was watching. In the distance, Thresh Prime was a green world again. Its cities rebuilt, its people free. But sometimes, when the wind was right, you could still hear the echoes of humans singing lullabies to alien children in languages they had learned just to offer comfort in the dark. On the 4th day, the young soldiers arrived to find Zixtal already waiting with a bottle of something stronger than his usual drink. His mechanical limbs were perfectly still and his good eyes stared at nothing. When they sat down, he did not acknowledge them for several minutes. Maybe we should come back later, Wind whispered, his ethereal form flickering with concern. No, Zixtal said without looking at them. Today I tell you about Kepler 442b, about the day humans killed a world to save its people. He poured a glass of the clear liquid and drank it in one swallow. His mechanical eye whirred as it focused. The final battle of the Centauri campaign. The enemy had retreated to their last stronghold, a planet they had spent 50 years turning into a fortress. Every city was a military base. Every civilian was a soldier or support staff. 20 billion people dedicated to war. Shardvix's crystal body pulsed nervously. How do you attack something like that? You do not, Zixtal said. The mathematics were clear. It would take a century to reduce through conventional siege. Maybe longer, and the enemy knew it. They planned to hold that world forever and rebuild their fleet. He poured another glass but did not drink it. Our commanders were discussing options. Blockade the planet and wait for them to surrender. Send in infiltration teams to disrupt their operations. Build larger fleets and accept massive casualties. Gruff leaned forward. What did the humans suggest? Zixtal's laugh was like broken glass. Planetary annihilation. Complete destruction of the world's surface using antimatter charges placed in the planet's core. The table went silent. Rock was the first to speak, his voice like grinding stone. That is genocide. That is what we told them, Zixtal said. The human admiral, a woman named Zhang, listened to our protests patiently. Then she showed us something that made us all sick. He finally drank the second glass. A complete evacuation plan. Every civilian transport in human space, plus ships borrowed from allied species. Temporary habitats built in neighboring systems. Medical facilities, food distribution centers, housing for 20 billion people from dozens of different species. Zip had started bouncing, but it was frantic now. You cannot evacuate an entire planet. Zhang said they could do it in 36 hours, Zixtal said. The time it would take for the antimatter charges to destabilize the planet's core after detonation. His mechanical eye focused on each of them. I thought she was insane. I told her so. She asked me a simple question that changed everything. What question? Wind asked. She asked me how many people I was willing to let die to preserve one world, Zixtal said, because that is what we were talking about. The enemy would never surrender. They would fight until every last person was dead. Military and civilian alike. He gestured with one mechanical arm. Zhang's plan would save 19 billion civilians and eliminate a threat that could restart the war, but it required destroying their home forever. Shardvix's crystal body had gone completely dark. That is an impossible choice. That is what humans do, Zixtal said. They make impossible choices and live with the consequences. He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars glittered like scattered diamonds. The operation began at dawn on the 3rd day of the siege. Human engineers had spent 48 hours calculating precise placement for the antimatter charges. Not just to destroy the planet, but to do it in a way that maximized evacuation time. His voice grew quiet. While the engineers worked, human ships began arriving in the system. Thousands of them. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, military transports, even private vessels. Every ship that could carry people. He turned back to the table. The evacuation started before the charges were even placed. Human soldiers went down to the surface under heavy fire to evacuate civilian areas. They ignored the military targets and focused on schools, hospitals, residential districts. Zip stopped bouncing entirely. The enemy just let them? The enemy tried to stop them, Zixtal said. But humans are very good at fighting their way to people who need help, and very bad at stopping once they start. He sat back down. I was assigned to monitor the evacuation from the command ship. I watched human soldiers carry wounded enemies to safety. I saw them give their own oxygen to alien children who could not breathe the planet's atmosphere. His mechanical fingers clicked against the table. A human medic named Park spent 6 hours in a bombed hospital, delivering babies while artillery shells fell around her. When I asked her why she did not evacuate to safety, she looked at me like I was insane. What did she say? Rock asked. She said the babies did not care about the war. They just wanted to be born. Zixtal poured another glass. Park delivered 14 babies that day. All of them lived. He drank slowly this time. The charges were placed after 18 hours. Deep in the planet's core, timed to detonate in 36 hours. That gave the evacuation teams exactly enough time to finish their work. Wynn's form shimmered with anxiety. Did they succeed? They saved 48,627 people in the last hour, Zixtal said. The evacuation ships were so overloaded that some humans gave up their own seats and stayed behind to help with the final transports. His good eye focused on something far away. I was on the last ship to leave orbit. As we pulled away, I could see the planet beginning to glow from inside. The antimatter was starting its work. He was quiet for a long moment. Zhang stood on the bridge watching her home screen, monitoring refugee camps in 3 different systems, making sure every evacuated person had food, shelter, medical care. She organized the destruction of a world and the salvation of its people with the same calm efficiency. Gruff's ears were flat against his head. What happened to the planet? Kepler 442b is glass now, Zixtal said simply. A smooth sphere of melted rock orbiting its star. Beautiful in a terrible way. You can see it from orbit around the new refugee worlds. He gestured toward the window. But its people live. 19 billion? 400 million? 300,000 souls. They live on 17 different worlds now, integrated into new societies, building new lives. Shardvix's crystal body pulsed weakly. How many humans died in the evacuation? 847, Zixtal said. Every single one of them died protecting someone else. Loading evacuation ships, defending transport routes, staying behind to help others escape. He finished his drink. After the operation, I asked Zhang how she could make such a choice, how she could order the destruction of an entire world. The old veteran looked at each of the young soldiers. She said something that still keeps me awake at night. We did not destroy a world. We saved 20 billion people who happened to be standing on a rock that was in the way. Rock's voice was barely audible. That is the most terrifying thing I have ever heard. Is it? Zixtal asked. Or is it the most hopeful? Humans looked at an impossible situation and found a way to save everyone. The cost was enormous, but the alternative was worse. He stood up again. The refugees from Kepler 442b have built new cities, new cultures, new ways of life. Their children grow up on green worlds under different stars, but they remember where they came from, and they remember who saved them. The old veteran started to walk away, then paused. Zhang retired after the war. She lives on New Kepler now. A colony world built specifically for the refugees. She tends a garden and teaches human children about the stars. He looked back at them one last time. Every year, on the anniversary of their evacuation, the refugees hold a celebration. They call it Glass Day. Not to mourn their lost world, but to celebrate the impossible thing that humans did for them. As Zixtal disappeared into the shadows, the 5 young soldiers sat in stunned silence. Outside the window, ships moved through space, and somewhere among them were the children of a dead world, alive because humans had chosen to save them. Wind spoke first, his voice barely a whisper. Tomorrow is the last story, they all nodded, but none of them were sure they wanted to hear what Zixtal would tell them about why humans were really fighting this war. In the distance, a small fleet of human ships moved with quiet purpose toward the edge of known space, carrying supplies to refugee colonies and messages from families scattered across the stars. And if you knew where to look, you could see the faint glimmer of Kepler 442b, a glass monument to the day humans learned to kill worlds in order to save the people who lived on them. On the fifth day, Zixtal was not in the cantina when the young soldiers arrived. They waited for an hour, then two, growing more nervous as time passed. Finally, Shardvix went to ask the bartender if anyone had seen the old Vorthak. "He is on the observation deck," the bartender said, his tentacles gesturing toward the upper levels of the station. "Been there since dawn, just staring at the stars." They found him on the highest deck of Kepler Station, standing before a massive window that showed the galaxy in all its glory. His mechanical limbs were perfectly still, and his good eye reflected the light of distant suns. "We thought you had changed your mind about the last story," Gruff said, his ears up but uncertain. "No," Zixtal said without turning around. "I was just trying to find the right words. This story is different from the others." The young soldiers arranged themselves in a semicircle behind him, all of them looking out at the same stars. "The other stories were about what humans do in war," Zixtal continued. "This story is about why they fight wars at all." He finally turned to face them, his mechanical eye whirring softly. 3 months after the glass planet, the war ended. Not because anyone surrendered, but because everyone got tired of fighting. The galaxy was exhausted, broken, bleeding from 100 wounds. Zip had stopped bouncing completely. "What happened then?" "Peace negotiations," Zixtal said. "Representatives from every species, every faction, every government. Months of arguing about territories and reparations and justice." He gestured at the stars beyond the window. "The humans sent one representative, a young woman named Williams. She listened to all the arguments, all the demands, all the threats. Then she stood up and asked a question that changed everything." "What question?" Wind whispered. "She asked why we were still talking about the war instead of talking about the peace," Zixtal said. "She wanted to know what we were going to do with all the orphans and refugees and broken worlds." Rock's voice rumbled with confusion. "That was not her responsibility." "That is what we told her," Zixtal said. Williams looked around the room at all of us, representatives of species that had been fighting for decades, and she said something that made my brain hurt. He sat down on a bench facing the window. "She said humans did not see enemies and allies. They saw neighbors, and neighbors help each other." Shardovix's crystal body pulsed weakly. "I do not understand." "Neither did we," Zixtal said. Williams explained that humans looked at our galaxy and saw a community. Different species, different worlds, different cultures, but all part of the same neighborhood. He laughed, but it was not bitter this time. She started talking about joint colonies for war refugees, medical exchanges between species with different biologies, educational programs so our children could learn each other's languages and customs. Gruff's ears twitched. "What did the other representatives say?" "They said she was naive," Zixtal said. "They said peace was about preventing war, not about building friendships." Williams listened patiently. Then she showed us something that made everyone in the room go quiet. He reached into a pocket with one mechanical arm and pulled out a small device, a communication pad. She activated it, and suddenly we were looking at live feeds from across the galaxy, human ships delivering supplies to former enemy worlds, human doctors treating alien diseases, human engineers rebuilding infrastructure on planets that had been battlefields. The old veteran held up the device so they could see the dark screen. While we had been arguing about peace treaties, humans had been making peace happen. One person, one family, one world at a time. Wynn's ethereal form shimmered with amazement. "They were doing this during the negotiations?" "They started the day after the fighting stopped," Zixtal said. "Without orders, without treaties, without anyone asking them to. Human soldiers who had been fighting for their lives were suddenly flying medical supplies to enemy hospitals." He put the device away. "Williams told us that humans had a saying. The best way to make peace is to act like it already exists. So that is what they did." Rock leaned forward. "What happened next?" "The negotiations changed," Zixtal said. "Instead of arguing about who owed what to whom, we started talking about how to coordinate relief efforts. Instead of drawing new borders, we started planning refugee resettlement programs." He stood up and walked closer to the window. Williams had maps. detailed plans for turning war-torn systems into thriving communities. She had already talked to human colonies about accepting refugees. She had medical research programs ready to share with alien scientists. She had trade agreements that would benefit everyone. Zip bounced once, then stopped herself. She planned all of this during the war. Humans were planning the peace before the war even ended, Zixtal said. They were studying our cultures, learning our languages, figuring out how to help us rebuild. While we were fighting, they were preparing to be neighbors. His mechanical eye focused on each of them. That is when I finally understood what makes humans so frightening. It is not their weapons or their tactics or their willingness to die for strangers. What is it? Shardvix asked. Hope, Zixtal said simply. Humans look at the worst situations and see possibilities for something better. They see enemies and imagine friends. They see ruins and picture new cities. He turned back to the window. After the treaties were signed, I was assigned to monitor human activities in the former war zones. I expected to see military occupations, resource extraction, the usual things victorious species do. Gruff leaned forward. What did you see instead? Schools, Zixtal said. Hospitals, farms, humans building infrastructure for species that had been trying to kill them months before. Human children playing with alien children, learning games from cultures across the galaxy. He was quiet for a moment. I watched a human teacher named Martinez spend 2 years learning crystalline mathematics so she could teach refugee children in their own conceptual framework. She studied for hours every night after teaching human children all day. Shardvix's crystal body began to glow softly. Why would she do that? Because the crystalline children were struggling with human math concepts, Zixtal said. Martinez said every child deserved to learn in a way that made sense to them. He laughed, and for the first time it sounded genuinely happy. I filed reports about these activities for 3 years. Each report was stranger than the last. Humans adopting alien war orphans, human scientists working to cure diseases that only affected enemy species, human engineers building cities designed for alien biologies. Rock's voice was thoughtful. It sounds like they were conquering through kindness. That is what I thought at first, Zixtal said. But conquest implies taking something for yourself. Humans were giving things away. Knowledge, resources, time, energy. They were making themselves poorer to make others richer. He walked back to the bench and sat down. Finally, I confronted Williams about it. I asked her what humans really wanted from the galaxy. What their endgame was. Wynn's form flickered with anticipation. What did she say? She said humans wanted to go home at night knowing their neighbors were safe and happy, Zixtal said. That was it. That was their grand strategy for galactic domination. The observation deck was quiet, except for the distant hum of the station's life support. I have been watching humans for 5 years now, Zixtal continued. I have seen them fight impossible battles and win. I have seen them sacrifice everything for strangers. I have seen them kill worlds to save people. He looked at each of the young soldiers. But the most frightening thing about humans is not what they do in war. It is what they do in peace. They make the galaxy a better place, one small act of kindness at a time. And they do it so naturally that they do not even think it is remarkable. Gruff's ears were up and alert. Is that why you told us these stories? I told you these stories because you are about to serve alongside humans, Zixtal said. Some of you will be assigned to joint operations. Some of you will visit human worlds. All of you will meet them eventually. He stood up one last time. When you do, remember this. Humans are not like us. They do not think like us. They do not value the same things we do. But they are the best neighbors the galaxy has ever had. Shardvix's crystal body was glowing brightly now. What should we do when we meet them? Learn from them, Zixtal said. Ask questions. Share your own knowledge. Let them teach your children and teach theirs in return. He started to walk toward the exit, then paused. And remember that the frightening stories about human warfare all have the same ending. Humans fighting to protect something they love. If you are lucky enough to be one of those things they love, you will never be safer anywhere in the galaxy. As the old Vorthok walked away, the 5 young soldiers stood at the window looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were moving between worlds, carrying supplies and messages and hope to anyone who needed them. Wynn spoke first, his voice full of wonder. I think I want to request assignment to a human unit. Me too, said Zip, bouncing again for the first time in days.